Hey there, I'm Tracy Spears, speaker, author, coach, and founder of Exceptional Leaders Lab, and head cheerleader for anyone wanting to play bigger. This week, I'm super excited to introduce you to Ellen Stackable. Ellen was a high school and community college English teacher for 20 plus years and now serves as the executive director and co-founder of Poetic Justice. Poetic Justice's mission is to offer restorative writing and creative arts programs to individuals who are incarcerated in women's prisons and jails in Oklahoma, California, Oregon, and Tijuana, Mexico. The Poetic Justice vision is to offer opportunities for healing and growth by holding space to process trauma and rewrite personal narratives to transform the story of incarceration. Since the organization began in 2014, over 4,000 women on the inside have participated in Poetic Justice. In 2018, Ellen was one of the 10 finalists for the CNN Hero of the Year. In 2019, she received the Courage Award given by the University of Oklahoma, and in 2024, she was a recipient of the Newsmaker Award from the Tulsa American Women in Communication. Ellen believes in the power of writing and storytelling to change lives, and I couldn't agree with her more. Listen, I can't wait to get to know her better. Ellen, welcome to the podcast. So glad you're here.
So excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, listen, as I was digging in, learning all things about you, and I said this at the top of this, I can't believe I don't already know you. And reading through some of the accomplishments, I have so many questions. But before I get to all my questions, do you mind just giving us a little bit of background on you that maybe didn't start in that bio? Tell us a little bit about you.
Oh, gosh. Well, first of all, I love the questions you sent me ahead of time because they really made me, I spent a lot of time just thinking through, switches in my life and times that I've had changes, which I think sort of that's the nature of being a human being. Is we navigate major changes in our lives, whether they stop us dead or whether they open a new doorway or, even how we respond emotionally. So that was really timely for me.
What made it timely for you?
I think I'm going to a reunion for a group I was part of right after I graduated from high school for a few years. It was a group that started off as okay and quickly became not okay. In Colorado, it was a kind of in the early days of the Jesus movement, and it started off fine, and then it really became sort of a cult. So they're having a reunion in 2 weeks. My son luckily lives really close to where the reunion is in Fort Collins, Colorado, and I just, I said, if it's really terrible, I will just go and hang out with you and the grandkids.
Oh my gosh, this is a whole line of questioning I did, wasn't it?
I know. I was even going to bring it up, but that really has caused me to think through on stuff. What was the nature of my time there? What did it result in for me? And I think in large measure, I am who I am today because of those years.
Interesting.
Because I think, I learned the power of the wrong kind of authority. I learned the power of misogyny. I learned, because I didn't grow up in a home where that was true. I have 5 brothers, no sisters, but I never felt less than because I was a girl in my family. But certainly in this place, and it was called Mercy Farm, I never fit in. I was always considered rebellious while I was there, which was not fun. But I think it's given me a spidey sense for injustice that has really led to who I am today and what I do with Poetic Justice.
I have so many questions about Poetic Justice. You said 5 brothers, no sisters. Where are you in the birth order?
I'm the third.
Okay, so you're right in the middle of all those boys.
Right. That's right.
Where did you grow up?
Grew up in Denver, and my dad was a school teacher. My mom was a social worker, and we spent every summer. We had a business on the west side of the west entrance to Rocky Mountain National Park.
Nice.
So I had, it was just an idyllic growing up.
For you, though, you're in Denver, Colorado, the western part of that, and with all your brothers. Do you stay there until you graduate high school? When do you move from there?
Yeah, so graduated from high school, and then right in that time, I joined this group, which was in Fort Collins, which is about an hour and a half north.
Okay.
And I was there for 7 years. So, yeah, I briefly went to college, quit, and did that full time. And they had a series of produce stands and pie shops all over northern Colorado and Wyoming. And so I worked in all those different ones at one point or another. And it's just interesting because the people who are coming, some of them are like, oh, those were the good old days. And then there's others who are like, no, the strict here.
Okay, good. That was my fear, is you're going to be re-recruited back into the group.
Yeah, it's been long gone for it. It's been gone for probably 25 years, though.
Okay. Well, I'm a conspiracy theory. I love Dateline and 48 Hours and other things. And now I'm like, have I seen this on Dateline? Have I seen this on? No, I haven't. Tell me I haven't.
No, you haven't. And
Yeah.
it really wasn't your typical when people think of cult, they get all like, whoa. It was mostly the guy was a crook, and he used the Bible to justify and to get what he wanted. And he was just sort of he had no checks and balances on him whatsoever. And I think all of us were just kind of like in the early stages of, wow, this is amazing. I'm having this, truly life-changing spiritual experience. This is an awesome way to, live this out in a commune. And then it got, but as the years went by, it got more and more off. So, and I was in leadership, so I didn't know a lot of the crooked stuff that was going on till after the fact.
Oh, wow. So how does that change you spiritually when you leave that? Do you leave all of that behind and search for something new to connect to? Or do you discern the difference between what was the cult, which I've never said in a podcast, or what you truly believe?
It was the latter. And so a picture I can give you of my journey when I left there. I went home for a time and lived with my parents. I didn't know what to do. I had, honestly, a lot of PTSD. And somebody recommended, believe it or not, the Narnia books to me.
Okay.
Lewis. And so I started reading those. And I would read till 3 or 4 in the morning and just bawl, because I thought, this is who God is. This is a picture of who God is, not what I heard on the farm. And so for me, that was really helped me to turn my life, I guess, towards what I would say is a more genuine expression of who God is.
Wow. How did your parents feel when you came back? Did they know what was going on?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because I had 2 older brothers there, too.
Oh.
And one of my brothers left about a year before I did. And the policy was if someone left, that you never spoke to them again. Yeah, I mean, it was awful. And there was like a period of about 4 or 5 years where we cut off our parents, too. That was our instructions to do that. And so there was a lot of healing that had to happen between me and my parents and my younger brothers. And so by the time I left, the relationship was really good, and they were very, very supportive of me.
Wow. Gosh. So when you started this with Shifts Out Loud, and you're reflecting on some of those things. That's a huge first shift. Maybe the biggest one I've heard. And how does that change how you move about the world after you kind of heal a bit with your parents and your family? Then what happens?
Well, in many ways, I felt like life was too good to be true almost, because I was so much joy being out of that situation. I went back to college, which I had always dreamed of doing. My dad was an educator and an immigrant's son, and so he was really, really big on getting your education. And, I met the love of my life, met my husband, started a family. So, those years were really good. I think, what it led to was, me teaching, and I love to teach. I love teaching, in particular, helping people find their voice in writing and in speaking so that they have freedom to really find out who they are. And then I I think it led to indirectly a couple of things. One was my youngest brother was early on part of the AIDS epidemic. And, I was with him a lot. He lived in New York City on the Lower East Side, and I would go see him a lot, particularly to help him when he was coming out of the hospital, and was with him. My whole family was with him at the very end when he passed away. And I think that had a profound effect on me, realizing how many people at that point were alone. They were treated as lepers, they were ostracized, they were rejected. So when I came back to Tulsa, the faith group I was with, I wanted to start home cooking that we would deliver to people who were homebound. And that was another shift, because for me, I think I hadn't understood the depths of the tragedy of that epidemic until it affected somebody in my family. And my dad initially was very cut off from my brother, but then, that changed and was made whole at the very end. And so when I came back, we contacted people with RAIN in Tulsa, which was a group that was working with homebound people who had AIDS, and they were very, very suspicious at first, because they hadn't had exactly positive experiences with church.
Right. Nobody's trying to deliver home meals.
No, and they thought we were going to deliver something else.
Right.
And so we met with them. We had several long training sessions with them, and they took a chance. And we started bringing, we would get a hold of somebody and say, well, what's your favorite food? And so this one guy was from New York, and he said, I haven't had a New York cheesecake in years. Could you do that? So, I would go with my kids and my husband. We would go and we would break bread and eat with them together. And, so my kids had some really interesting experiences. Yes, we met different people. And many of them had no one. Their families had left them behind. So I think that was a profound shift for me too. Just seeing the power of just offering the smallest things and the difference that can make.
That changes your children as well, right?
Yes. None of them want to be teachers, but
But I bet they move about the world with a little bit more compassion, just having that experience, right?
Yes, they do.
Wow. So did you formalize that organization to do that delivery, or was that just you and a couple of people?
Well, it was being about probably 20 people who were in the church I was in. And we just did it for a number of years until, there was really right at the tail end when there started to be really effective treatment and doors started opening up for people to, live other places. And so it just kind of naturally ended at that point.
Nice. What got you back to Tulsa? Because you're saying you did that here?
Yeah. So after I left that group in Colorado, there was one of the reasons that group started to disintegrate and people started leaving was there were a couple of people that came from Oklahoma to kind of lead some workshops there. And basically their workshops were, this is not the place to be. This is not an accurate representation of who God is. And so I just really wanted to come back and visit Oklahoma. And so there was this brief period when I was on the farm where things opened up, like really brief, just a couple months. And so in that time, I flew out to Oklahoma and to see this campus group. And I thought, this is where I want to be. This is where I'm supposed to be. So I went back, but then being able to leave was a lot. At that point in my life, I was a strong believer in spiritual authority, leaving with a blessing, not leaving, all these things, Now I look at it and I'm like, why did I think that? But I was determined to leave. So I kept going to the leader over and over again, and he kept giving me qualifications. And finally, he just said, I think if you stay here, you're going to be a rebel and God will never use you. And if you leave, you'll probably leave God, but you have my blessing, 20 minutes. Don't say anything to anybody, leave. What? Yeah.
So that's obviously the right decision, yet that's got to be also traumatizing, leaving other people. Did you Yeah. Tell me about that. Were there people that you were in 20 minutes saying, go with me? Like,
No, no, I mean, I honored that. And there was a couple that lived on the farm that had their own house. They were the only ones that did, and they were in the process of leaving. And they were very, very influential in my life. So I just walked over there. And, the wild part was the farm is still there. It was given when the whole thing shut down, they ended up donating the entire 100-acre farm in northern Colorado to the Denver Rescue Mission, which is an amazing group.
nice.
And so I hadn't been back for almost 40 years. And the farm is like 20 minutes from my son's house. So one day when I was visiting them, he goes, "Hey, Mom, do you want to go to the farm?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." So it was a wild feeling, Tracy. And I was just walking around. It looks a lot different. And then I walked over to the dorm where I lived and the door I walked out of, and just hit me. It's like, wow, last time I was here, I was told I had 20 minutes to leave.
What happened in that moment? Were you super emotional? Were you super grateful? What were you?
Just really, really emotional. I mean, sometimes when you have a rift in the time continuum, it's a very strange feeling because you simultaneously feel like who you are today and who you were then. And I think it was that. And it wasn't till we walked up to the other end of the farm where they have all the stuff. It's a live-in place for guys that are trying to get on their feet again. They give them a job. They give them a car. They help them find a place to live. And as I stood out there, I just thought, wow, this is kismet. All of this, in spite of everything that was awful there, the work we did was not in vain because now it's being used to change lives.
Nice. Oh my gosh. I can't wait for the audience to hear about Poetic Justice in a moment. But this is contextualizing some of the questions I have for you later. Just understanding a bit more about you and how you are wired and were wired in that sense. And you're going to have to come back and tell us how the reunion went. Have you done a reunion since?
No.
This is the first time.
Well, and what happened, there's like a Facebook site called Mercy Farmies. And so after I went that time with my with my son, Will, I wrote a piece about it and posted it on there. And that started people saying, we really should have a reunion. We should do something. And so the guy who's doing the reunion, a bit of an odd duck, but I don't know. I think it'll be good. And the crazy part is the last thing, I've never told this story. This is just kind of interesting that I am. One of the guys in Tulsa that came to visit, and helped bring about the end of it, he, as people were leaving, he just said, well, if you are interested, I would love to hear your story. So shortly before he passed away, he gave me this whole sheaf of papers and their interviews from people who were on the farm. And I'd had them just for years, forgot I had them. And then with this reunion coming up, I thought, oh my gosh, I need to see if people want these.
Yes.
And I've started reading some, and I was just like, oh my God.
Wow. So what keeps you from putting that into some kind of a publication? Like, is it just because they're all just so private, people wouldn't want that would be a great, story to hear and understand. And maybe
I am going to copies of everything. They all knew they were being interviewed. They released it.
Right.
But when I go back, I'm just going to say, I'm not going to walk around with the papers. That would be Debbie Downer. I'm just going to say, hey, any of you who interviewed with this guy, I have the originals. If you're interested, you can have them back.
Interesting. What's your hope for your time at the reunion? You walk out of there going, I'm so glad I went. What would be the outcome you hope for?
I think I'm hoping to see maybe some of the same things I've experienced, which is understanding the profound effect it had on my life, even though it wasn't any of the things that maybe we thought it would be back then, because my two brothers, one of them passed away a year ago, and he's the one I was closest to, and he was on the farm the longest. But he ended up spending 25 years. He lived in San Diego, and he would go to Tijuana every week and work with a local faith-based drug rehab there. And he was the only guy from America that would do that. And they just loved him. And for him, he feels like the reason he did that was because of what he saw when he was on the farm, all the wrong things.
So it pushed several of you into this nonprofit world, obviously, and this life of service. God.
I hope I see that. I hope I see, people, the good things have come out of their life. We all want to have, I'm a sucker for a happy ending, and they're not always there. So.
Well, I mean, this might not be an appropriate comment. Well, it'll be my first, but it feels like if it's not a happy ending, they're not going to show up. It feels like you're only going to get to talk to people, right? That
I know.
Sure didn't do good. So that whole when I was reading about your mission and all the things, I want to talk about all of that, like how you end up with this incredible compassion, and the piece of it that I really want to unpack a bit too is. When you say that, you believe writing and the power of writing and storytelling can change people's lives. So that, and you were an English teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So you are in this position now where you married those two things. How did when you were a teacher, kind of take us through that for a bit. Were you just I'm just going to be a teacher, and I'm, going to help people when I can? Or did you in the back of your mind know that you were going to start to help a different group of people? And let's talk about that as well.
I think I've always been hardwired to see people that are forgotten in society or ostracized. And that's just part of my DNA. I mean, I think I got that from my mom, who worked in kind of the poorest parts of Denver as a social worker.
Okay.
But I love teaching. I taught at Tulsa School of Arts and Sciences from the very beginning when it started. And I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better place to teach. I mean, I love the people I worked with, my students, and I always used to say, if there was ever a point where I feel burned out, then I'm going to leave. And I never did. I mean, I loved it to the very end till I said goodbye. But I was working on trying to figure out kind of the final piece of my master's degree, which I never finished because of Poetic Justice.
You're finishing it really, living it out loud.
So I was working on that, and somehow I ended up on this rabbit trail of, and I think I've always just been interested in the carceral system in America. It just seems like so many people are, what is it, almost 2 million now that are behind bars. And so I came on this just startling facts that Oklahoma incarcerated more women than any other state. And Oklahoma's always fascinated me anyways, not being from around here. I mean, I've been fascinated with the history of indigenous people here. I was way back when I first started teaching here in a small private school. I started teaching about the Tulsa race massacre, and none of my students had ever heard about it.
Do you know that I never heard about it? I went to school here, never heard about it until the commemoration was coming up. So,
yeah, and this was I had them actually go to different parts of town and interview people about, it was called the Tulsa Race Riot at that point. And, east side, west side, north, and south. And it was just fascinating. Then I had them do original research at the library on the account of it. And so anyways, I loved teaching. I loved what I did, but I came on this fact and I thought, I want to do something. I want to do something about, because it didn't seem like there were very many programs out there for women who were incarcerated. So I started trying to figure out a way in, which is a labyrinth, with all dead ends, and tried. And then one of my colleagues, who is a hip hop artist, he said, "What's this?" Dan Hahn. I don't know if he does it anymore. He was hip. He did hip hop as algebra, and he was doing something along with some people from the Unitarian Church, doing like spoken word at the Tulsa jail with men. I said, can I come along? So I came along and I thought, we have to do something with women. Is anyone doing anything? And he goes, no, but why don't you, see what you can do? So he connected me to another spoken word poet, Claire Collins, and so we started going somehow. Neither one of us knew what we were doing. And it was profound. Early on, we both determined we didn't want a place with hierarchy. We wanted it to be a safe place for people to express themselves. And so in that first year, there was more emphasis, I think, on, spoken word. And then Claire's life took a different direction. And I think we started to pivot it with Poetic Justice more and more towards his really, and at that point, no one was talking about it, but it was really trauma-informed practices, allowing them to make their own rules for the class, sitting with them, not above them, introducing ourselves. From the moment we walk into, we leave, everything we do says you are a person that matters in this world.
Mm.
And it finding a safe place to process the deepest traumas, if you want to, is to me sort of miraculous that even happens in prison. But it does. And I think that's the power of writing, is that things that are stuck in here that are almost like cancers that are eating away at you, when you can get it from your heart to your hand to the page, and that if you choose to share it, I think healing can come.
I totally agree with you. When you started that and you were allowed to go in, was there a lot of enthusiasm from the prisoners? And that's probably not the right term. What should I call it? How should I address them?
Well, so county jail and prison are so different. Okay. County jail is trauma. It's a And so our classes there, it was like we wouldn't know from week to week if someone was going to be back or not, And yes, they were very excited about it. And it really helped me. I think I walked in and I had all the unconscious biases that I didn't know until they were confronted, which is the way it works, right?
Yes.
They would be tough, that they would be scary, that they would be semi-literate, and none of those were true. I have never felt safer in my lives than when I'm in a class with women around me in prison, until the guard comes in, and then I don't always feel safe.
They're
a little bit aggressive sometimes, but
that's fair.
Yeah.
So you go into that and you all are trying to give them this safe space. Not trying, you're providing this safe space for them. And you're really inviting them into the deepest parts of themselves through utilizing the writing. Did you have a curriculum that you followed for that, or did you make it up as you go? Tell me a bit about that.
We made it up. A lot of our volunteers are teachers, and teachers are some of the most awesome human beings in the world. I'm deciding, especially teachers, just a little biased. And so, we would be doing something like one day I was listening to NPR's Marketplace Money, and this gal from Alaska, Hannah Heimbach, started talking about being a fisherwoman in Alaska. And at the very end of it, talked about how she, even though she doesn't make any money and the hours are terrible, she said, I like who I am when I'm fishing. Mm-hmm. And that line just hit me, and I thought, oh my gosh, that would be a great thing, a great prompt, a writing prompt, because they struggle so much with shame and self-hatred, but to pick something in yourself where I like who I am when. And so, we would come up with different things as we now have about, I think, over 100 different prompts. And depending on the facility, we do really different things. When we're at Creek County, which is in Pulpa, they just literally do, it's each week something they have to prepare, because it's a different group almost every week. So what can you do that would make a difference if you only see someone once? And then at Tulsa County, there's more time usually. And so they do like a 6-week curriculum. And our volunteers now are, we have volunteers that have been doing this, some of them for 10 years, some of them 6, 7, or 8. I mean, we seldom lose volunteers unless they move or go to law school.
Right.
I'll-
What do you do with the writings? Are they private for them? Do you have access? I mean, do they read them out loud to you, or is it just you're facilitating? I have many questions about that process.
Well, so typically we go in, we do kind of an icebreaker, and the intent is that we hear everyone's voice in the icebreaker, and we kind of have an open field for them. And then we do kind of a meditation and breathing to kind of help transition from where they've been. And then we introduce the prompt and do some, kind of board work where they can all join in, and of course they've already made rules for the class to make it a safe place. And then we always have examples for the prompts, and those are from other women who've been incarcerated from our classes. So like one we often do early on is an ode, a little poem of gratefulness for everyday things. So we have an ode to ramen noodles, an ode to the geese that fly into the yard. And then they write for 15 minutes and we write. And then people share by choice. So when they share, after they share, they can ask for comments, questions, or silence, or whatever. And I love that because instead of just share next person, share next person, share next person, you're respecting the journey in them that they took to write. And oftentimes it's really powerful because people say, I didn't know anyone else felt this way. What you wrote about is something I've experienced too, and I feel like it set me free to write now. And then they give us a writing, and if they choose to, we put them together in an anthology. And on the last day of class, we have a graduation, and we have the anthology printed, and we tell them, now you're published poets. So it's really, really powerful. And oftentimes, we sometimes see women in county, and then years later, we see them in prison, and they're like, I still have that anthology. It's one of the only things I've still got from those days.
Wow. I mean, do you want questions, comments, or silence? Is what I'm going to ask you right now. Because I do want that to land with the listeners. That idea of that is so powerful.
Well, because we're not good at listening. I was telling someone the other day, we were talking about code switching, and, I laugh because some of my friends are like, that time you learned what we've had our whole life long, Ellen. Right. But I have to code switch when I work with the people who work at the facility. And depending on who it is. But I have also learned that code switching is about listening and thinking about that person's lived experience, what they've gone through, and not just hearing the demeaning way they're talking to me, but thinking, where have they come from that has produced that?
Right.
And I think that's been a really powerful lesson for all of us.
For sure. Is this program, the distance learning program that I read about, is that what we're talking about?
No, we have in person, which we are at both the women's prisons. We're at 3 county jails. But then March of 2020, actually March 20 of 2020, prisons around the country started shutting down with the pandemic. And I had been in Oklahoma City with my son and his family. And as I was driving home, I thought, we have to do something. We have to be ready. And so within a week, we had a proposal we sent to all the wardens, and we put it, again, code switching in their language. It was a protocol for distance learning. And they were all, yes, please do, yes. And so we started where we were trying to figure out how could we possibly duplicate the magic that happens when we're there in person, when we just have snail mail at that point. And so one way we did it was we would send in the prompts, And we would have an envelope with a stamp and addressed to us that they could send back. And each person who did that on the inside was paired up with a writing partner on the outside.
Oh, nice.
So it wasn't a writing mentor. It was a writing partner with it where they both wrote. And some of the deepest relationships came out of that time because it was bad for us, but you can't imagine what it was like on the inside. If
No.
you were Mick Bassett, you were in your cell 23 out of 24 hours. If you're at Eddie Warrior, they have open dorms of like over 100 plus women in the dorm and 3 high bunk beds. And you had to stay on your bunk bed 23 out of 24 hours, which was just brutal. No one knew what was going on. I mean, I would get the mail and I would put it in the oven at 250.
Oh, because oh gosh, really? Oh yeah. Yeah, well, that's when we were leaving. Yeah, we were leaving our groceries out
Yes.
3 or 4 days at a time. Yes.
We ended up, though, by the time the lockdown lifted, we had almost between 25 and 30% of women incarcerated in the prisons in Oklahoma were in our distance learning program.
That is remarkable. You touched so many more women than you were in the in-person then, right?
Well, and no one was ready. There were no other programs out there. We were the only program during the pandemic for much of the pandemic, especially one where you connected with a human being. I mean, they were getting things sent to them, Bible studies, magazines, whatever, but to actually connect with a real human being is so much better.
When I was studying for this and, trying to learn a lot about you, and of course I went to the website and I was reading everything. One of the quotes stood out to me from a distance learning participant. Throughout the class, I was compelled to dive deep and face the pain and darkness I have survived head on. That's helped heal wounds I didn't even realize were still open. And when I read that quote on there, I had to get up and like walk around for a bit because I thought, those are not simple words written on a page, right? Like that is a shift for these participants that as you have already described it, they'll never be the same either after spending this time with you. So, wow.
I'd never thought about the shift for them, but you're right. I mean, and it's just a powerful, we've kind of changed our model at the prisons. We first did 10-week sessions, and then the exit surveys were, I'm just beginning to experience some healing. We need to do more. And so we kept expanding that. And finally, we've come up with kind of a school year model where we have the first session is our motto is, I have a voice, I have hope, I have the power to change.
Mm.
So the first session is oriented towards voice. The second session is oriented towards hope. And the third session is change. And that is where they do passion projects. So they can do anything from quilt to writing a play, children's book, painting, native beading. They do, and we bring stuff in.
Oh my gosh. I hope you're going to tell us in a bit how to help support your organization. How do you receive your funding for all of those items?
That is a stretch for every nonprofit. And I think it's particularly small nonprofits and one where we are geographically all over the state, because a lot of foundations are very specific to that county or that area. And women's prisons, men's prisons aren't in those places. They're in out of the way parts of the state where nobody knows and nobody sees. So we have some funding through different foundations, but we need more. I would love to have people of means say, I believe in you. I believe in this story. I want to help.
Mm-hmm.
Because many of our individual givers are teachers who, are fabulously wealthy.
I will make sure before we end that people can donate. I'm going to say it now though. But I want to talk about the CNN hero
Okay.
about that. But tell them where about the website if they want to go. If they're like, I don't have time to finish this, I want to go donate. I don't want to lose that. Where is the what is the website?
Somehow we got this website, www.poeticjustice.org. And right on there, right at the top is a donate button. And I would love if you guys would think of it. We have new programs coming up all the time. We are starting a newspaper at both Eddie Warrior and Mabel Bassett, teaming up with Prison Journalism Project, so that every staff member, every person who's incarcerated there will have a quarterly newspaper.
I love that. Are you looking for not only donations, but are you looking for volunteers that are willing to write letters and be in correspondence, or do you have that covered?
No, I mean, generally we have it covered, but we are always wanting to bring in new volunteers, or if you wanted to be in person, it's a little more complicated to be in person, but we are always looking for in-person volunteers too.
Okay. Okay, well, we're going to do a much bigger commercial at the end of this. I want to shift now, though, because we're talking a lot about poetic justice for sure. The shifts that you have had and thinking about your journey when you transitioned out of education, did you stay in teaching as you created Poetic Justice, or did you just full out go, no, I'm going all in? Tell us a bit about that shift.
No, I stayed teaching full time until 2019. So, and what I would do is every Tuesday I would drive to Mabel. Well, the first was we were doing Tulsa County, so that wasn't that long of a drive. But 8 years ago, we started our classes at Mabel Bassett, which is in McLeod, Oklahoma, which is an hour and a half away. So I would literally jump in the car as soon as school was over and head towards McLeod. And luckily I have a husband who's very supportive.
Yeah.
And I used to get such a kick out of it on the way. I get a call and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm on my way to prison. So there's nothing like being able to say that. So then it just got where it grew and grew and grew. We started in Tijuana, which was at the rehab where my brother worked every year. He asked us to come down. He said, I love what we're doing here, Ellen, but the women need more than Bible studies. Would you come and start Poetic Justice here? So, and it's been going ever since. And it's a wild one because it's in the poorest part of Tijuana. So
how can you go there? So do you have somebody there on the ground like you are here?
Yes.
Okay.
Same California, same in Oregon. And actually we have team leads at each of the county jails here in Oklahoma now and at Mabel Bassett. So I go to Eddie Warrior every week now. And I've had people say, as an executive director, you really need to be stepping away from that. And I'm like, you know what? I would rather step away from being an executive director than to take my finger off the pulse of what I believe in and do. So, no.
I understand that. And that is always a conundrum for a founder because, to run the business and to be in the business, that's sometimes it conflicts. So I can appreciate that, what you're going through in that. More about that later. But so you are in Oregon, California, Tijuana. Are you looking to expand your reach into different states at this point, or is this as big as it's going to get?
No, question my son asked me once, he said, do you believe that this would be a program that would benefit any woman that's in prison anywhere? And I said, absolutely, I do. And he goes, well, then don't dream small. So it takes a certain kind of person to start it. What we do is we provide all the support, all the training, but it takes, some real tenacity to work through the system wherever it is. In California, we really didn't get an opening we were in a county prison in San Diego. And San Diego County is as big as most states.
Right.
Huge. But we couldn't get in the women's prison until the pandemic. And when we started distance learning at the women's prison in California, then once the lockdown lifted, we were trusted and a known source, and now we go in person there.
Interesting. What's the next state you hope to expand to?
I think the flyover states of America often have less resources. I mean, if you look at the East Coast, I mean, on the West Coast, there's a whole bunch of Hollywood actors that do something called the Actors Gang, and they do drama and stuff in prison. Ear Hustle's out there. They have a whole group from UC Berkeley that works at San Quentin. And then New York, on the East Coast, you have a lot of colleges that offer classes. So to me, I would love to see it. We almost started in South Dakota, but then the person who was doing that actually worked at the prison, and they ended up saying you can't do both and.
Okay.
I'd love to see any place. We've got incarcerated women everywhere.
Right. I remember the first time I heard that we were a flyover state in Oklahoma, and I was like, what? I mean, I know what I think it means. And then, but I know what you're saying, but yes, people need to land here, right? They need to, to be more connected. Now, can we talk about the CNN Hero of the Year? That's a big deal, sister. Tell us everything.
I didn't believe it. So I opened up on my promotions one day, just checking because I generally just delete them all. And it said CNN. And I was like, okay, this is spam. But I opened it. And I mean, honestly, I didn't believe it. I was like, what? I've been nominated for what? And so anyways, I responded, and they do a background that I felt like I was trying to enter the CIA. They had interviewed all these people, did all this other parts. And then they came out, and Megan Dunn was my producer, and she was just an incredible person. She really listened to me because I, from the very beginning, said, I am so honored that this is happening, but I don't want the focus to be on me. I want it to be on the women who I honor and I love on the inside. And so they somehow got permission. At that point, no one was filming in the women's prisons or men's. They got permission to come and film at Mabel Bassett, and interviewed several women there. They sat in on one of our classes. I mean, it was just amazing.
Wow. So what happens? So they interview you, they put that together. Do you end up going to any kind of the ceremony?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, so you start off, and there's like 20 some, I think, CNN heroes. And then I found I was one of the 10 finalists. Yeah. And so it's in New York at the Museum of Natural History. It's like museum, literally. And they have somebody introduce you and tell your story. So it was like Will Ferrell was there, and, all these people. I mean, it was so touching. And the gal that introduced me, I can't remember her name, which makes me so sad. But she was in Black Panther, and she's a playwright, and she was just incredible when she introduced me. And it's kind of surreal, really. You just have to sort of pretend like there aren't 500 people out there.
Right.
And luckily there's a teleprompter. I think the hardest part was figuring out what to wear. I mean, I hate shopping, and I hate dress shopping. And at that point, I was still teaching at TSAS. And so I would bring picture after picture to all my friends. And then I started ordering ones, and I'd try them on.
I love that you had that moment. Did you, who was that you met them and that you were most excited to meet? Who did you meet when you were there?
Well, of course, Anderson Cooper, but I don't think.
See, I would love to meet him. I think he's so, So that's a big deal. He's a big deal.
That was a big deal. And honestly, just getting to know the other heroes was so inspiring. And, we kind of stayed in touch ever since then.
Nice.
Just some really, really inspirational people.
So,
and it was at the very end of the when everybody is up in front. I had told my daughter, I said, when I do this, I'm saying hi to you, just you. So she's back here watching it, and sure enough, at the end,
since this is radio, since people are listening, it's an ear tag. It's a nod to Carol.
Carol Burnett ear tag.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I love that you had the presence to be able to think about anything other than just not passing
her eyes. Yeah.
So you're all up on the stage, and for the audience, if they haven't seen it, and then they announce the person that is the CNN Hero of the Year, or is it just 10? There are just 10, and it's all 10 of you.
No, there's somebody, and how they do it is it's people do vote online.
Okay.
And the guy from Peru was the one that won it, which, I was thrilled, just being there. And each of us gets it's like a 2-foot high rectangular wooden thing that could be like a weapon of mass destruction, I think.
Sure. Sure.
It's so heavy. And each one of us had a different kind of designation as far as the hero, and mine was healer. So
nice. Did they choose that?
Yeah, they chose it.
Well, that was well chosen. Oh my gosh, I love that you had that experience. Tell me, what is the next shift that you're most excited about?
Oh, wow. I don't know what lies. I've had so many recently. We've started showing some of the artwork that the women do in different galleries. And we've had that's a photographer from California who's internationally known, one of our volunteers, who said, can I come in with my camera and do some autobiographical portraiture where they choose how they want their picture taken. And then they've been blown up to 2 feet by 3 feet high. And so we've been showing those with artwork. So that's one shift that could happen, but we don't have the bandwidth to do it. We need to hire a person just to do that. It's been shown at the 101 Gallery. We've had it at OCU. It's at the San Diego Public Library right now. And I would love to be able to show that, because it's easy to forget the people that are behind bars. But once you see them and hear their story and see their faces, my hope is that that'll bring about change and eventually in our world. It can't be that we have the worst women in the world, but our incarceration rate would say that. But I have seen enough women, talked to enough women to know that there's some that need to be incarcerated, but there are a vast amount for whom it was the color of their skin, how much money was in the bank, where they were from, that led to incarceration.
Wow. Yeah, that just hits. Yeah, that hits.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm so grateful people like you are moving about the world and trying to make a difference. I'm probably your new biggest fan, and I'm going to think about how to best support you. So now we've given the website. I want to give the website again, just for those of you that are listening that would like to donate and help support Poetic Justice. Go to poeticjustice.org and click the donate button. Gosh, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time letting us learn more about you and what you're doing. And just thank you for what you're doing.
Well, I'm glad we finally made the connection. I listened to the whole one with Onika, who volunteered with us for a long time. And I was like, wow, that was such a good interview.
That's so nice. She's easy to interview like you. She's doing a lot of interesting things. So yeah. Is there anything else you would like to talk about? Any other shift we have not talked about that before we go?
Nope. I will get back with you when I come back from the reunion.
Listen, we're going to have to do a follow-up. If you're up for it and if you will do it, maybe we'll go on, do a Facebook Live or something and just hear how the reunion is. Because I'm totally curious how that's going to go. That'll be fun to hear about it. So,
yeah.
Ellen Stackable, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you.